I wish I could take this feeling and bottle it so I could share it with anyone who shows even a modicum of interest in sampling pro wrestling. Because it doesn't get much better than this. All Out 2021 was a landmark pay-per-view and a major statement from AEW. That statement was, pro wrestling is awesome and AEW is the home of pro wrestling. It's the pro wrestling you remember and the pro wrestling that might even be better than you remember. And as the litany of praise continues to pour in, it's clear that this show has resonated and will continue to resonate with new and old AEW fans for a long, long time to come. I've lost count of the number of people saying this was their first AEW pay-per-view or their first wrestling pay-per-view in ages, and how they're now hooked and here to stay. Now, you might say it's hyperbole, and you might say it's markdom, but quite frankly, there are times that call for some $100 words and phrases, and this is one of them. You can call this show a catalyst. You can call it a watershed moment. You can call it a turning point. Hell, you can call it a godsend. And you would be right in saying all of those things because this show was important. This show was special. This show was utterly improbable and maybe even impossible. Now, before you close the video and accuse me of being an AEW fanboy just licking Tony Khan's boots, hear me out. It cannot be undersold. AEW needed All Out to be a home run. After getting everyone's attention with the return of CM Punk and promising their biggest pay-per-view ever, All Out had to deliver. And what did we get? Lightning in a bottle. This show was lightning in a bottle. Nearly everything worked. Nearly everything was of high quality. Fans and wrestlers all came together to create an all-time pro wrestling experience to the point that many are calling it the best pay-per-view they've ever seen, the best pay-per-view of all time, or at least the best pay-per-view they've seen in the past 20 years. Those comments don't just happen by luck alone. AEW needed to bring it, and in the eyes of the vast majority of people who watched this show, they over-delivered and made new fans. The whole point of this enterprise is to spread the gospel of pro wrestling, and AEW just wrote one of its most important chapters while converting a ton of people to its cause. So, let's get to it. All Out 2021. After a fun 8-man buy-in between the Jurassic Express and Orange Cassidy taking on members of the HFO, which also saw the return of the Butcher, we start things off with Miro and Eddie Kingston. And these guys go hard. Eddie targets Miro's neck with suplexes, knees, and kicks, while Miro shows off his beastly power game and targets Eddie's back. This match is snug and greatly elevated by the commentary team, especially Excalibur, who brings up Miro's average match length as TNT champion, calling him the most efficient TNT champion in history, and by letting fans know about Eddie's love of All Japan Pro Wrestling and its 4 pillars. You can Google that after this video. This match is a fight. And just when it looks like Eddie might actually beat Miro, God's favorite champion low blows him and kicks his face off to retain the title. A meaty beginning to the pay-per-view. If I could criticize anything, it would be that the low blow itself looked a little awkward, but it was done vividly enough to get the match's message across. Eddie Kingston was robbed, though he did get his wish of having D's nuts redeemed. If this leads to a rematch down the road, I'll be right there for it, as Miro continues to build on what is becoming a special run and Eddie's aura keeps growing too. Not to be outdone in a strong style war, we follow things up with Jon Moxley taking on Satoshi Kojima. This was great. Both guys lay into each other, the match feels like a struggle, and the fans are 100% into it, even cheering the lesser known but incredibly impressive Kojima and his hypnotic pecs. I cannot stress how cool it is to see the New Japan logo just brazenly displayed on AEW's LED screens during Kojima's entrance. This clash felt like a war of the worlds, with the well-traveled Gaijin taking on a true master of his craft. It also kind of reminded me of Wolverine taking on a much cooler, yet somehow campier version of Sabretooth. Forget it. Anyway, Kojima's strikes and lariats are not enough, as Jon Moxley eventually hits a couple of paradigm shifts to take home the victory. The commentary sells the respect Moxley has for Kojima, and then the unthinkable happens. Jon Moxley looks like he's just seen a ghost, as none other than the murder grandpa Minoru Suzuki comes out to stare him down and stiffs him with a bunch of forearms and gives him a gotch pile driver for good measure. Two things I loved about this. One, the crowd. An American crowd belting out the chorus to Suzuki's entrance theme, Kaze Ninare. As a lapsed New Japan fan, it was actually really surprising, but punched me right in the heart with how pure and loud it was. 2. Moxley laughing like a madman after Suzuki drills him. He clearly loves and lives for this violent stuff, and fans are all the richer for it. Oh, and hey, that match is happening 3 days after the pay-per-view on Dynamite in Moxley's hometown of Cincinnati, Ohio. Tony Khan, you ridiculous, beautiful man. We don't deserve this, but we sure as hell want it. So yeah, Kojima and Moxley was electric, and the post-match was sublime. Up next are Britt Baker and Chris Statlander in the AEW Women's Championship match, and man do they deliver. Statlander tries to avoid the lockjaw, Britt slinks away from the spider crab, and the galaxy's greatest alien tells Britt to go boop herself. And she does. She actually does it. There's a lot more, and the vast majority of it is excellent, including a top rope fisherman neckbreaker from Britt, stiff-looking strikes from Statlander, and, just like the first two matches, a real sense of struggle and physical competition. The story is Britt trying to avoid Statlander's powerhouse offense, and Statlander taking several big risks, not all of which pay off. The final minute sees Britt foreshadowing the surprise appearance of Adam Cole later in the show by hitting the Pittsburgh Sunrise to a massive reaction from the crowd. Shortly after, Britt hits a curb stomp and locks in the lockjaw on a non-responsive Chris Statlander. Easily Britt's best match since the Lights Out Classic against Thunder Rosa, and a statement match from Chris Statlander as well. She will be AEW Women's Champion at some point, and tonight went a long way in establishing her as a top act. Then we had what will go down as one of the most brutal, mesmerizing, and emotionally shattering cage matches you are ever likely to see. The Young Bucks and the Lucha Brothers just don't miss, and this was another trademark chapter in their career-long rivalry. After a fabulous live music entrance, which included AEW music guru Mikey Ruckus, Mexican rapper Muelas de Gallo, and tributary headdress from the Lucha Brothers, these teams had the crowd in the palm of their hands as the Young Bucks utterly wrecked the Lucha Brothers by whipping them against the steel on repeat before things hit a whole new level when Brandon Cutler ran down and introduced some tacky Nikes to be used by Matt Jackson. No, really, they were Nikes that had tacks on their soles. Blood was smeared on luchador masks, bodies were laid to waste, and feats of inhuman resilience and daring were on full display. In the end, after having the crowd firmly on their side, and after a ridiculous dive by Phoenix off the top of the cage, the Lucha Brothers hit a tandem driver for the 1, the 2, and the 3 to dethrone the Young Bucks and become the new AEW Tag Team Champions. Two moments I loved from this match. One, Penta essentially taking a bullet for Phoenix and begging the Bucks not to hurt him. Just an incredible moment of protective brotherly love. Two, a bloody Penta hugging his teary-eyed daughters at ringside after the win. As a father myself, this triggered the waterworks in my living room. This was modern tag team wrestling perfection, and you need to go out of your way to see it. Truly raw and powerful stuff. Then we are treated to the best casino battle royale that AEW have put up so far. The format of this match is admittedly a bit of a nightmare, especially from a camera cuts perspective during entrances, but in terms of drama, this one delivers. There are no dead spots with people lying around and waiting for the next entrant to come to the ring. The action moves at a fluid pace, and stories are paid off or continued. From Swollen Diamante continuing their grudge, to Anna Jay reuniting with Ty Conti, to Jade Cargill and Thunder Rosa reigniting pleasantries, and more. If you've been following the week-to-week stories, this match rewarded you for paying attention. Outside of a weird Riho elimination, the first 10 to 15 minutes of this one are quite satisfying. But this match is really about one woman. Coming out in the final Joker position, it's Ruby Soho, whose name is affectionately chanted before she even comes out. Sometimes a badly kept online secret can feel even better than a true surprise. The fans welcome Ruby with open arms, and you can tell she's overwhelmed by the love just radiating from the crowd. In the end, it comes down to Ruby and Thunder Rosa, which is a tremendous visual given how aesthetically vibrant both performers are. They end up on the apron where they teased near eliminations before Ruby finally kicks Rosa in the face and sends her to the floor, and the crowd goes wild. I loved this. Once again, it was just so pure that it made me tear up twice. Once when Ruby made her entrance and was embraced with love from the crowd, and twice when she hugged Bryce Remsburg after winning the match. I cannot wait to see what Ruby does next. AEW treated her like a star and built a top babyface challenger all in one match. Sometimes this wrestling stuff is not that hard. Well done, everyone. After such an emotional segment for Soho, you need some kind of reset. That is provided by MJF, who trolls the audience by making them think Jericho is going to come out to his old countdown entrance, only for the words, "Jericho's last match," to flash on screen as the clock hits 0 and MJF appears. Not to be outdone, Jericho comes out to the not-so-polished sound of electric guitar and a Judas serenade from the crowd. The match itself goes way better than many Jericho skeptics likely expected. This is a grueling classic pro wrestling affair, complete with arm drags, inside cradles, drop kicks, submissions, aerial maneuvers, and some brawling for good measure. The story ends up being MJF's back, which gets targeted by Jericho and is part of the actual finish. Before that, there's a dusty finish with MJF seemingly pinning Jericho, but the ref Aubrey doesn't see that Jericho got his foot on the rope. Luckily, another ref did, and the match is reset. The final sequence is incredible, as Jericho gets MJF into the walls of Jericho, and just as MJF is about to grab the rope, Jericho pulls him back to the center of the ring to a swell of cheers and a tap-out victory. Tremendous. Say what you want about Jericho, this was a fantastic match with a rare, well-used dusty finish. MJF also continues to impress, and I know it's repetitive by this point, it's kind of amazing how good he is for his age. He's not hurt by this at all, too, and will continue to be an insufferable jerk. Just great, great stuff here. Well, then it was time for the reason a lot of new AEW fans bought this pay-per-view, the return of CM Punk, who comes out sporting full tights instead of his trademark shorts. By now, you're probably aware that a good chunk of this match is a tribute to the time 1-2-3 Kid debuted and took on Bret Hart, and it worked. Punk feels things out, tries to slow things down to neutralize Darby's explosiveness, and they bait the audience along for the ride. Darby takes some Darby bumps, Punk does some of his trademark spots, and there's a wonderful moment where Punk hits the GTS, but Darby falls to the outside so Punk can't get the pin, as he scrambles after him. And eventually, Punk does hit the GTS with Darby crumpling to the mat for the 1-2-3. And just like that, CM Punk is back. This was all really good stuff. Punk is in great shape, he looks happy, Darby's star keeps rising, and the fans are here for all of it. After the match, Punk, Sting, and Darby all show respect to one another, and hey, there's no heel swerve for the sake of a heel swerve. It's just three baby faces acknowledging each other and giving the crowd a feel-good moment after Punk's first match in 7 years. Imagine that. Then, in the penultimate match of the evening, we have an inoffensive and fun cool-down bout between QT Marshall and Paul White, who is making his AEW in-ring debut. White takes care of the entire factory with fists and tackles, slaps the hell out of QT's chest, and hits a chokeslam for the win. The whole segment, including entrances, didn't take more than 5 to 7 minutes, I think, and it was a welcome come-down and palate cleanser before the main event. I don't know how often White will wrestle in AEW, or who could provide interesting feuds for him, but he was good here, and it was satisfying to see QT get the business. Finally, it's main event time, where Christian Cage and Kenny Omega put on another banger wrestling match on an evening of banger wrestling matches. This one is about Christian trying to hit the kill switch at every turn and Kenny slipping away from the jaws of head trauma. The result is a well-paced battle with some striking character work, as is always the case with Kenny in particular, with the crowd biting on a few false finishes. Never mind a painful table spot that became the story of the match at one point, as Christian's ribs took a bit of a beating. In the end, just as it looks like Christian might hit an avalanche kill switch, Kenny struggles out and hits an avalanche one-winged angel for the victory instead. The finish gets a chef's kiss from me, as does the match as a whole. Christian has more than earned his stripes in AEW. I will not tolerate any more Christian slander. And he was a great foil for Kenny, and even more so for Don Callis during the build-up to this match. Respect to both men, go out of your way to watch this. And then, the post-match that everyone is buzzing about, and will continue to buzz about for years. Kenny gloats and says that anyone who could actually beat him is either not in AEW, retired, or dead. Just as he says that, a brand new theme blasts through the speakers and Adam Cole walks down an AEW ramp. He teases turning on the Elite before super kicking Jungle Boy and reuniting with his old friends. He grabs the mic, talks about the friendship he has with these guys, calls the Elite the most dominant faction in the history of this business, and that there's no chance in hell anyone's gonna stop them. And then, as Kenny is about to sign off for the night, the familiar opening notes of Flight of the Valkyries hit, and out walks the greatest American professional wrestler ever. Yeah, I said it. And the crowd absolutely loses their minds in the arena, and I absolutely lost mine at home. Bryan goddamn Danielson is in All Elite Wrestling. He cleans house alongside Christian and Jurassic Express, and the heels turn tail and run up the ramp while the faces stand defiant in the ring. In the words of Excalibur, what an incredible moment, what an incredible time to be alive. In the words of Tony Schiavone, God, I love pro wrestling. And in the words of Jim Ross, the scene is changed, the game has changed, and we're all lucky enough to be here to go along for the ride. Amen. Stellar, tremendous, beautiful, epic. Use whatever emphatic adjective you want, and don't let anyone stop you or make you feel bad about it. Two massive debuts done back-to-back on their biggest pay-per-view ever is a heck of a flex from AEW, and I absolutely loved it. All in all Out 2021 was a massive success. Immaculately paced, wonderfully performed, and joyfully received. The biggest compliment I can pay this show is to tell you all that I teared up no less than 4 times during it. So, without further ado, and to wrap up this review, I'll only leave you with these 3 statements. This is where the flag got planted. This is where things truly shifted. This is where pro wrestling came home.